everybody, I'm Simon Harris and welcome to the latest episode of the vlog. So it's been about a week and a half since May 25th, so GDPR D-Day. I hope you're all well. I hope you've kind of managed to rest and recover since the big day itself. Wanted to talk about some news today. I'm going to talk about GDPR for a little bit and the impact that it's had on campaigns and how the market's recovered from that. Also talk a little bit about the IAB Tech Labs new transparency framework for data, and also the kind of big news that seems to be coming out around integral ad science and people acquiring majority stakes, and also their plans for the future. But let's look at GDPR and its kind of impact on the ecosystem for the past week and a half first. Okay, so the dust has settled a little bit from GDPR. I know that many of you guys felt that you needed a full bank holiday weekend to recover from the run-in to May 25th. It's been about a week or so now, and the market seems to have settled a little bit. I know on the 25th itself, there were lots and lots of buyers struggling because of the issues that the Wall Street Journal covered around Google being able to work on third-party exchanges where third-party ad tech was involved. You know, I think on the day itself, there were lots of people having delivery challenges, not just in DBM, but in other platforms as well, because of their ability to ingest consent signals. You know, certainly through WhatsApp and the back channels that, you know, I sort of speak to people on, I'd heard stories of delivery challenges of up to 60–70%. Have to say that I didn't see those myself, but I know that that was a pretty common theme. I also heard publishers saying, you know, their revenues had dropped that day by like 90%, and obviously, you know, if you're in a challenge vertical, as publishers are, that kind of drop in revenue, if sustained, would be absolutely devastating. I think the positive thing is that the market has quickly moved through those challenges. So, you know, last week and this week, I've certainly not heard any buyers saying, you know, I'm struggling still to scale all of my campaigns. There might be one or two edge cases out there where things are struggling still to scale, but I think by and large on the buy side, things are okay. I think as well, by and large, publishers are okay as well. We saw, you know, there were some real buying opportunities through certain exchanges as there was lots of demand focused around AdX, but I think the kind of pricing seemed to have normalised, and I'm really pleased for publishers actually that they're not kind of you know, being revenue challenged in the way that maybe they were across the kind of 25th, 26th and 27th. You know, although the loss in buying efficiency I could deride as well, but I'm not going to do that. I'm pleased that the ecosystem is normalised, and yeah, I think the one thing that this shows is like ad tech is very robust, right? There were lots of people saying that the sky was going to fall in, and that hasn't happened. Like, should the market maybe have been more ready than it was? Yeah, maybe it should have been, but ultimately, you know, even big players like Google hit some challenges, and I guess the one sort of the kind of silver lining on the cloud is like when they hit those challenges, they move through them very, very quickly in terms of sorting out the problems that were reported in the Wall Street Journal. So, you know, the 25th was just the start of this kind of new normal that we live in. But, you know, I'm pleased and I feel very positive about the fact that ad tech vendors out there and the publishers that they work with have moved through kind of challenges really quickly. I see that as being a very positive thing, and it speaks to the kind of resilience of ad tech, and certainly that feels very, very important in the kind of context of the duopoly. Okay, so there's been a ton of interesting news come out in the last week or so around integral ad science. So about 7 or so days ago now, Scott Knoll, their CEO, did an interview with Ad Exchanger. Super interesting. If you haven't read it already, definitely take a look now. And Scott was talking about the direction of the business sort of from two perspectives. He was talking about their product direction and he was talking about their overall business direction. So I'm on the record as saying that some of the products that verification vendors provide these days has become commoditized. So to counter that thought amongst some buyers, Integral are sort of not betting the farm, but they're rolling out a number of new tools which currently don't exist in market. Probably the most notable one will be a product which effectively allows buyers to assess the optimal amount of time on screen for which they need to show an ad to get someone to carry out an action. So that in itself is a really, really interesting product. Whether or not it helps third-party verification companies, remain differentiated and not commoditized by some of the big guys who are now offering these products in platforms remains to be seen. But I have to say, I certainly think that that's an interesting product. What was more interesting, though, is Scott commented on the, as I said about a week ago, about the future direction of the business. And he was talking in the context of an IPO. So that was interesting in that Integral is the last of the kind of 3 big verification companies that's in play. Obviously, Moat and Grapeshot have been bought by Oracle. So Integral's the last really, really scaled independent verification company. And Scott said, the future for us is an IPO, and that's going to be our North Star. So that was a week ago, and it was very much looking like, an IPO was maybe imminent. There was no time frame put on it, but certainly that looked like the direction of travel for the business. I thought that was interesting as well because, let's not kid ourselves. The markets have not been favourable to ad tech companies recently. I'm not going to note names because that's not what I'm about, but, some of them have been absolutely hammered in the sort of public market. So I was impressed by, that sort of bullish ambition. I have to say, Integral's a fantastic company, full of lots of very smart people. When I was first making the jump from paid social into programmatic buying, the very smart people over there helped me kind of make that transition. So I've always got a bit of a soft spot for them. They're profitable, they're growing fast. So, that kind of suggests that an IPO might be profitable. Still feels pretty bullish. One of the things that I thought was interesting today, however, was Vista Equity have announced that they have acquired the majority stake of Integral Ad Science. So there's close to nothing known about the deal itself. Obviously, I don't think that an acquisition of Integral would be maybe in the same kind of bracket as a Moat, but it might not be far off. As I said, they're an incredibly scaled company. They've got lots of good people on the ground, and they've got global reach as well, and they're growing. But yeah, anyway, this company called Vista Equity has acquired the majority stake of Integral. Now, Scott's in the trade press again today saying that, that doesn't necessarily preclude us from having an IPO. But it'll be really, really interesting to see this one pan out. As I said, lots of time for Integral, so I'm interested to see where this goes, and I hope it works out for them all. So another big piece of news that came out around about 10 days ago was the launch of the IAB Tech Labs Data Transparency Framework. For those of you who don't know who the IAB Tech Lab are, they create frameworks and standards upon which the programmatic industry is based upon. So the obvious example of that would be the OpenRTB protocol. More recently, the IAB's Ads TXT framework, which all of you will be familiar with, is another. They are really, really important standards, and I think the IAB's data transparency framework is really, really important, especially in Europe, especially in the context of GDPR. And what it's effectively aiming to do is bring kind of standardization to data segmentation across multiple vendors in terms of its quality, where it's sourced from, I guess in the context of Europe and GDPR, whether consent exists for a given user. And I think that's really important. I'm on the record as saying that I feel that, third-party data vendors will definitely be challenged with GDPR because of the lack of transparency in their supply chain. That opacity, meaning that we can't really understand at the moment whether or not someone's consented or not, that's a real challenge, and it makes buyers very unsure of of a lot of third-party data vendors, not all of them, but a lot of them at the moment. So this new framework from the IAB feels really important. It's worth noting that it's not fully formed yet, so there's a consultation group that's been working on it. I believe the standards themselves are open for comment until July, I think, end of July, so July 30th or there or thereabouts. If you work at a third-party data vendor, this is your opportunity to get involved. Buyers like myself want to see kind of more transparency in terms of where data is sourced from, and definitely around consent. So this is the opportunity to really nudge the industry along in the right direction. As I said, open for comments until July, so end of, so get yourself involved in this one. Okay guys, that's it from me for now. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode of the vlog, please hit subscribe on YouTube if you've not done so already. If you like it on LinkedIn as well, that's always greatly appreciated. If you disagree or violently agree with something that I've said, let me know in the comments. One of the things I've been really humbled by throughout this vlogging experience over the past 6 months or so is the amount of discourse that's been happening in the comments section of these posts. People disagreeing with each other openly, but doing so in a respectful manner. I think that's fantastic and I really rate that. Also, comment if you want me to cover something specific in a future vlog. And yeah, that's it from me for now. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.